My stepson invited me into his room, and you won't believe what unfolded. It's amusing how life can catch you off guard. You believe you understand your children, their movements through life, their thought processes, and then they surprise you with an action that shatters all that certainty. In that instant, it dawns on you that your understanding of them is not as deep as you once believed. One quiet afternoon, my son, Jake, called me into his room. Jake has consistently been a reserved individual, a man who speaks sparingly. He's in his early 30s now, still residing at home, as he focuses on building his career. Our relationship has consistently been strong, marked by harmony and an absence of conflict, yet, despite all the years we've spent together under one roof, there remained unspoken words between us. Unfilled spaces in our bond that neither of us had ever truly addressed. That day, when he approached me and casually said, "Mom, I'd like to show you something in my room," I had no inkling that I was on the verge of encountering something that would completely alter my understanding of him. I recall pausing at the threshold of his room for just a moment before entering. The walls bore the weight of time, adorned with faded posters, echoes of his youth, capturing the essence of sports, music, and the passions that once ignited his spirit. The light filtering through the window was gentle, nearly ethereal, and the atmosphere was imbued with a profound stillness. The soft hum of the ceiling fan filled the room, the solitary sound that enveloped me. The atmosphere was serene and tranquil, a place where the passage of time felt almost suspended. Jake stood by his desk, momentarily facing away from me, his shoulders tight with tension. I noticed how tightly his hands were clenched at his sides. It felt as though he was mustering the bravery to express something significant, something that had remained unspoken until now. My heart began to race, though the reason eluded me. The situation didn't seem overtly alarming, yet there was an undeniable tension, a heaviness in the air that was unfamiliar to me. It felt as though his call had created a new realm between us. He finally turned to face me, his gaze probing into my own. "Mom, I've been reflecting quite a bit," he started, his tone gentler than normal. "And I wish to share something with you. Something I've been crafting, something deeply personal." I nodded, feeling uncertain about what to say, uncertain about how to respond. We had consistently honored each other's privacy, leaving me completely in the dark about what he was referring to. He didn't elaborate, but there was a quiet intensity in his gaze that conveyed he wasn't merely discussing a project or some casual endeavor he'd been involved in. This was different. He gestured for me to approach, and I complied, moving over to his desk where a sizable, wooden box rested for the day. It was beautifully crafted, the wood rich and gleaming. With a deliberate motion, he raised the lid, uncovering what lay within. My initial impression was that it resembled a cherished, vintage memento, a true gem, a treasure trove brimming with recollections. However, as I examined it more closely, I came to understand that it was something deeper. Inside, there were photographs, old and faded, worn at the edges. "Mom, these are images from my childhood. I wanted to show you something," he said, his voice heavy with feeling. His fingers glided across the edges of the images, the very images I had stored in albums and boxes for years, hidden away in the recesses of my mind. I leaned in closer, my heart tightening in my chest as I recognized the faces in the photos, moments captured in time, moments I believed I had forgotten. There was Jake, a young boy with bright eyes, brimming with curiosity. There I was, cradling him, holding him close in my embrace, as I had countless times in the past. And then there was his father, standing beside us, laughing. The three of us together, so vibrant with life that Jake's voice cracked through my reflections. "I've been keeping these close for quite a while, Mom." I had no idea how deeply I longed for this. For us, the words lingered in the atmosphere, heavy with the burden of unexpressed feelings. Initially, I was at a loss for words. Part of me longed to extend a hand, to offer solace, to express what was in my heart. Everything was fine. Yet, another aspect of my perception revealed him to me in a manner I had never experienced previously. Exposed, candid, revealing something profoundly intimate with me. In that moment, I understood that I hadn't merely been clinging to the past. He had too, you know, Jake, I finally whispered, my voice a bit unsteady. I had no idea, he smiled gently, but it wasn't the smile I recognized. This one stood apart, exuding a sense of understanding and maturity. Indeed. It seems I haven't delved into that topic very often, have I? I shook my head, feeling a blend of astonishment and appreciation. Here he stood, extending an invitation into his world like never before, revealing himself not merely as my son, but as the man he was evolving into. Yet, there lingered an unspoken presence in the room. A profound depth of emotion that neither of us felt prepared to articulate, and I sensed that the dialogue was far from finished. Indeed, it was merely the beginning. The room fell silent once more. The gentle whir of the fan creating a soothing backdrop, as I settled next to Jake at his desk. The photographs rested between us, forming a connection from our shared past to something fresh and unexplored. He remained mostly silent following that first revelation, and I chose not to push him further. In that silence, there was a sense of reverence, as if we were both poised, anticipating the perfect moment to express what lingered unspoken. Jake lifted a photo, a snapshot from his high school graduation. It was one of those rare instances when all seemed right, his expression radiant with pride, his cap a bit askew, the atmosphere brimming with potential. He stared at it for a long time, not speaking. And I let him have that moment. You know, he said finally, his voice softer now, almost as if he was speaking to himself. For I never really told you how much I appreciated everything you did for me growing up. I swallowed, attempting to maintain my calmness. Those words, straightforward as they seemed, struck me more profoundly than I anticipated. I had always understood that motherhood, particularly as a single parent, was no simple task. I had put forth my utmost effort, perhaps excessively at times, yet to listen to him express it, to recognize what I had done for him, transformed all the sleepless nights, the worry, the sacrifices into something that felt worthwhile in a way that words could never capture. I took the necessary steps. I responded softly, giving a subtle, timid smile that caught Jake's gaze as it shifted to meet mine. His expression was contemplative. Indeed, I suppose I never truly grasped its meaning until this moment. Until I began to take matters into my own hands, you know, I nodded, though it felt as if he were peeling away layers, uncovering the depths of myself I hadn't fully acknowledged existed. We were finally discussing matters we had never truly recognized, the small, overlooked gestures of affection, the sacrifices, the silent moments that had shaped us as a family. Even in their subtlety, there was a palpable change in the atmosphere. Between us lay an unspoken agreement, a shift in our relationship where we were no longer merely mother and son. Instead, we stood as two individuals facing one another, sharing a space of vulnerability that had previously eluded us. The atmosphere in the room started to thicken, yet it remained bearable. It was our private moment. As Jake gazed at me, I noticed something new in him, an openness, a trust that felt unfiltered and authentic. He had transcended the role of my son. He had become a man. And I was beginning to understand that we were both on the brink of a new chapter in our relationship. Jake's hand glided gently across the desk, and for a fleeting moment, I wondered if he would extend it toward mine. But instead, he hesitated, then withdrew his hand, as if uncertain about how to close the final distance that appeared to extend between us. Mom, he began, his voice soft yet resolute. I have something else I've been wanting to share with you. I turned my head to meet his gaze, unexpectedly anxious. The manner in which he expressed it, the pause in his speech, sent my heart racing. The air enveloped us, heavy with a palpable sense of anticipation. I was completely in the dark about what he was about to express. Yet it seemed as though everything in that room had been building toward this moment. Jake inhaled deeply, his shoulders rising and falling in a manner that reflected the uncertainty in his words. I've been reflecting deeply on my relationships, considering what I desire from them, and their significance in my life. And I believe I've uncovered something significant about who I am. My mind raced, thoughts scattered like leaves in the wind. What might this pertain to? I felt the need to connect with him, to reassure him that regardless of the circumstances, we were united in this journey. Yet, I remained motionless, allowing him the distance he required until he turned his gaze back to me, his eyes probing for something. A glimmer of comprehension in my own. I've come to understand that many of my desires in relationships are tied to the lessons I've gained from you. Lessons you imparted without even being aware of it. I blinked, attempting to grasp the essence of his words. The manner in which he expressed it caused a tightening in my chest, filled with emotion, though the reason eluded me. Jake. What are you trying to say? He paused, and for an instant, the room seemed overly confined, excessively personal. His words flowed slowly, as if he were meticulously selecting each one. I truly mean that. You showed me the essence of love. Concerning genuine affection. Not the type of love that's focused on romance or extravagant gestures, but rather the kind that's consistent. That's enduring, that's developed gradually. A love that appears, regardless of the circumstances. That's what I desire in my life, Mom. That's what I wish to offer to someone as well. I was at a loss for words. His words crashed over me, unsettling my footing. How did we end up in this situation? How did this straightforward exchange about old photographs, about memories, bring us to this moment of unfiltered truth between us? Jake's expression softened as he witnessed my struggle. I'm not sure if I'm expressing this correctly, he said, his voice uncertain, however. I simply wanted you to be aware of that. I observe you. I truly understand you, Mom, and I feel a deep sense of gratitude, feeling immense gratitude for all that I have. I sat there astonished. My heart brimming. It was a moment I hadn't anticipated, a moment of connection, of mutual respect, of something more profound than merely a parent-child relationship. He was evolving, transforming. And in certain aspects, so was I. Jake, I said softly, my voice quivering with feeling. I don't believe I've ever felt prouder of you. He smiled. His expression radiating warmth that made everything feel lighter. In that instant, it dawned on me that we had transcended mere coexistence. We were sharing something much deeper. Something that could only come from understanding, from love, from the quiet moments that shaped who we were. The silence that followed was different now. It wasn't laden with uncertainty or tension, but rather filled with something far more profound, a sense of connection, a bond that had evolved and deepened in ways I couldn't entirely articulate. The bond we shared was unbreakable, regardless of what lay ahead. Yet, as I gazed at my son, I realized this was far from the conclusion of our dialogue. This was merely the start. The room seemed transformed, imbued with a newfound lightness, as if the very air had undergone a subtle change. We remained at his desk, enveloped by memories, yet it felt as though we were both in a different realm. The photographs, the ancient tokens of his youth, appeared to act as a canvas for the events that had transpired between us. A serene comprehension. With a desire for a deeper connection, Jake rose, stretching slightly, and gestured toward the window. It's amusing, he remarked, his tone slightly brighter now, how you believe you understand someone, yet then a minor event occurs and instantly everything shifts. I observed him intently, taking in his movements as he navigated the space. His movements carried a newfound ease. A sense of freedom that seemed unencumbered by the unspoken weight of the years between us. I experienced the same feelings, something had changed between us. And I sensed that this conversation was merely the beginning of something greater, something that would keep unfolding. Indeed. I suppose I wasn't aware of how much I truly needed this, I said. My voice still a bit unsteady, though no longer from doubt. It was a moment of quiet wonder, a realization of how far we had journeyed in such a brief span. Jake paused and turned to face me. His expression a blend of seriousness and tenderness. I believe I needed it as well. I did not. I may not have had the words before, but your unwavering support has always been a constant in my life. even when I struggled to express my needs. I've been attempting to do the same for myself, learning how to be present for those I care about, just as you were for me. His words carried a profound vulnerability, the kind that is seldom witnessed from children as they transition into adulthood. But here it was, unrefined and genuine. And I recognized just how deeply I had longed for it. How deeply we had both longed for this closeness that I leaned back in the chair, the weight of everything he was saying settling in. Jake. It seems we've both been anticipating that the other would make the initial move. I am aware that I have. I've been so concentrated on ensuring your well-being that I never truly considered what I needed as well. His eyes softened and he moved a step closer, now standing beside me. There's no need to tackle everything by yourself, you realize. I have arrived. I'm no longer a child. The words lingered in the space between us, and in that instant, I came to a profound realization. He had transcended the role of merely being my son. He stood alongside me in this realm, a companion in a sense. And as peculiar as it seemed, there was an elegance in that understanding. He had transformed into an individual, possessing his own thoughts, emotions, and a newfound sense of responsibility that had eluded him in his youth, and I had to learn how to honor that. How to welcome the. He was evolving, shedding the attachment to the image of the child he had once been. I understand, I murmured softly, my voice imbued with a gentle respect. And I believe that's what frightens me the most, releasing the maternal role, the one I've held onto for so long, and recognizing you as a complete individual. However, I am in the process of learning. Jake. I'm discovering how to embrace my role as your mom, rather than always being the protector or the guide. Jake provided a. He offered a half smile and settled beside me. His presence feeling more anchored now, more confident. I believe you have provided ample guidance. However, should you ever require my assistance, you can be assured that I am also here for you. For you, just as you've always been for me. I lingered there for a long moment, absorbing everything around me. The atmosphere was infused with warmth. And the connection we shared was more profound than it had ever been. In that space, in that shared silence, I came to understand the depth of our growth, not merely as mother and son, but as two individuals capable of sharing something genuine. Something created from respect, from understanding, and from the quiet moments that convey more than words ever could. We didn't have to clutter the space with words to understand the depth of our connection. We had conversed sufficiently. What began as a simple invitation to peruse old photographs evolved into an experience of much greater significance. It felt as though all the words we had kept hidden had finally emerged, revealed in a manner that seemed both unavoidable and restorative. You're right, I said at last, glancing over at him with a gentle smile. We no longer have to face this by ourselves. Jake reached out and placed a hand on mine, the gesture unadorned yet profoundly impactful. The touch conveyed a deep sincerity, carrying the weight of all we had experienced together in that fleeting moment. For the first time in a long while, a profound sense of tranquility washed over me. A new chapter seemed to unfold for us, one where we moved beyond the past and embraced the future, side by side. He gently squeezed my hand before rising to his feet. I believe it's time to begin preparing dinner shortly. Do you need assistance? A gentle chuckle escaped my lips, a comforting warmth blossoming within me. I would appreciate that. As we stepped out of his room together, I sensed a change within me. As we strolled alongside each other, the dynamic shifted. We were no longer merely mother and son, but two individuals navigating the complexities of life in unison. It had shifted, the necessity of one another had transformed into something different. It was about supporting one another in the most meaningful ways. It wasn't flawless, and perhaps it never would be. However, that was of no consequence. What truly held significance was that we had discovered our path to this realm of comprehension, and I sensed, deep within, that we were both improved by it.